He thought I would stay silent while he planned to sell my father's life away, but he had no idea what I had already prepared. Dear listener, my name is Megan Thompson. I am 34 years old. I used to believe that when you build something with love, sacrifice, and intention, no one would ever try to take it away from you, especially not your own family. But I learned the hard way that the people who know your life the best also know exactly where to strike when they decide they want more than what they deserve. I grew up beside a quiet lake in Minnesota, in a place where the mornings were wrapped in soft fog and the evenings felt like they were painted with gold. And for my father, that lake was never just water, it was peace, it was routine, it was a part of who he was, and watching him slowly lose the ability to walk down to it on his own was something I could not accept. My father, Richard Thompson, is a man who spent his entire life working with his hands, building things, fixing things, providing for everyone around him without ever asking for anything in return. And seeing him age, seeing his steps become slower, his balance weaker, and his independence slipping away little by little, felt like watching a strong foundation quietly crack under pressure. So I made a decision that would change everything. I spent 2 years of my life designing and building a house for him, not just any house, but a place where he could live with dignity. Where every corner, every detail, every small feature was carefully planned to support him without making him feel dependent, because I refused to let his final years be defined by limitation. I widened every doorway so that movement would never feel restricted. I leveled every floor so there would be no steps to trip over. I installed support bars in the bathroom and designed a shower that was safe and accessible. I lowered the kitchen counters so he could use them comfortably even on difficult days. And I personally oversaw every single decision, every measurement, every adjustment. Because this was not just construction to me, this was protection. But the most important part of that house was the path to the lake. I built a smooth, gently sloped walkway that stretched from the back door all the way down to the water. Designed so that my father could walk that path on his own again, without fear, without assistance, just like he used to, because I wanted to give him back. That house was not a gift, it was a promise. On my parents' 40th anniversary, I handed them the keys, and I will never forget the look on my father's face, the way his eyes filled with something deeper than happiness. Something closer to relief, like for the first time in a long while, he felt safe about his future. For 6 months, everything was exactly how I had hoped. He started walking more, slowly at first, then with more confidence, he followed that path to the lake every morning. He regained a sense of routine, a sense of control, and most importantly, a sense of himself, and watching that transformation made every sleepless night, every dollar spent, every sacrifice worth it. I thought I had done something right. I thought I had secured his peace. And then Ethan came back. My brother had been gone for years. No calls, no visits, no concern, no presence, just silence, and then one day, without warning, without explanation, he stood at the front door like he still belonged there, like nothing had ever been broken between us. I came because I'm worried about Dad, he said. It sounded right, it sounded responsible, but something about the way he said it felt wrong. In the beginning, everything looked normal. He spent time with our father, asked about his health, helped him walk, paid attention in a way that almost felt convincing, like maybe, just maybe, he had changed. But I have learned something about people. Real intentions don't stay hidden for long. His questions started small, subtle, carefully placed. Is this house really safe for him? What happens if he falls when no one is around? Do you really think he should be living like this alone? At first, I answered calmly, explaining every detail, every safety feature, every decision I had made. But I quickly realized that he wasn't asking to understand. He was asking to build a case. Then one evening during dinner, he placed a few brochures on the table, assisted living facilities. Clean, polished, carefully designed to look comforting, but all I could see was control, restriction, and a life that my father never wanted. I picked one up slowly, my fingers tightening around the edge. Why are these here? I asked. Ethan leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. We need to start thinking about options, he said. That word didn't belong in that sentence. Not after everything, not after all the years he was gone. I looked at my father, hoping he would say something, anything, but he just sat there quietly, his eyes moving between us, unsure, hesitant. Like he had already been pulled into something he didn't fully understand. That's when I knew this wasn't a conversation. This was the beginning of a plan. A few days later, I found a document sitting on the kitchen counter, power of attorney. And the name written on it was not mine, it was Ethan S. For a moment, everything went silent in my head. I turned toward my father slowly. Did you sign this? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He hesitated, then he said, he told me it was necessary. He told me, not explained, not discussed, told. I felt something shift inside me, something cold, something sharp. Something that replaced emotion with clarity. I turned to Ethan. "What exactly are you doing?" I asked. He smiled like this was all reasonable, like this was all justified. "I'm helping," he said. Helping, that word felt heavier than it should have, because I could finally see it clearly. He didn't come back to support, he came back to take control. But the moment that confirmed everything came sooner than I expected. One afternoon, I came home and saw a man standing outside the house, holding a clipboard, looking at the structure with the kind of attention that had nothing to do with care and everything to do with value. "Can I help you?" I asked. He turned toward me. "I'm here for the appraisal," he said. My chest tightened instantly. "Who sent you?" I asked. He checked his notes. "Ethan Thompson." For a few seconds I didn't say anything, then I stepped closer. "There is no appointment here," I said, my voice calm but firm. He looked uncertain. "Ma'am, I was scheduled. You can leave," I said, and this time he did. I walked inside slowly. Ethan was sitting on the couch, completely at ease, like none of this was a problem. "Did you order an appraisal?" I asked. He didn't even deny it. "Just checking the value," he said casually. Value, that word echoed in my mind, because to him this house was just a number, a price, an opportunity. But to me this house was everything. I took a step closer. "You didn't come back to help," I said quietly. He didn't respond. I looked straight at him. "You came back to take his time," he smiled. "Not politely. Not carefully, honestly." "Maybe," he said, and just like that, everything became clear. My brother wasn't here for family, he was here for control, and he believed I wouldn't stop him. He believed I was still the same person he left behind, but he made one mistake, a very serious one. He underestimated me. That night I stood by the lake, staring at the dark water as the wind moved across the surface in slow, quiet waves, and I let everything settle, every realization, every betrayal, every detail of what he was trying to do. And instead of reacting, instead of confronting him, I made a different choice. I chose patience, I chose strategy. Because this wasn't going to be a fight of emotions. This was going to be a game of control, and I was going to win it. Slowly, carefully, completely, because I didn't just build that house. I built everything around it, and I was not about to let anyone take that away, not even him. I learned very early in life that reacting too quickly to betrayal only gives the other person time to adjust. But silence, patience, and careful observation can turn even the smallest advantage into something powerful enough to change the outcome completely. The morning after I turned the appraiser away, I woke up earlier than usual, not because I had to, but because my mind refused to rest, replaying every detail of Ethan's behavior. Every word he had chosen, every move he had made, and the more I thought about it, the clearer the pattern became. This was not impulsive, this was planned. People don't return after years of absence with brochures, legal forms, and scheduled appraisals unless they already know what they want and how they intend to get it. And that realization didn't make me angry. It made me focused. I started with something simple. I began documenting everything. Every conversation, every paper he brought into the house, every suggestion he made in front of our father, every subtle attempt to influence decisions. Because if this was going to turn into a legal situation, and I knew it would, then emotions would not matter. Only evidence would. For the next few days, I stayed quiet. I didn't argue, I didn't challenge him. I let him believe that his pressure was working, that I was unsure, that I was slowly giving in to the idea that maybe he was right, and that illusion gave him confidence. And confidence made him careless. At dinner one night, he brought it up again. "I spoke to a specialist today," he said casually. Cutting his food like this was just another normal conversation. "They think assisted living would be a safer long-term solution." I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make him think I was considering it. Then I asked, "Which specialist?" He paused just for a second, but it was enough. "You wouldn't know him," he said. That was the moment I confirmed it. There was no specialist, there was no professional guidance. There was only him building a narrative. I nodded slowly, pretending to accept the answer, but inside I was already adding another piece to the picture I was building. Later that night, I sat with my father on the back porch, watching the lake the way we used to, in comfortable silence, the kind that doesn't need to be filled with words. After a while, I asked him quietly, "Do you want to leave this house?" He didn't answer right away. He kept looking at the water. Then he said no, just one word, but it carried everything: fear, uncertainty, and a quiet resistance. "Then why are you agreeing with him?" I asked. He sighed. "Because I don't want conflict," he said. That answer hurt more than anything else. Not because he agreed with Ethan, but because he felt like he had no choice. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't just about control of the house. This was about control of him. And that meant I needed to protect more than just property, I needed to protect his voice. The next step was simple. I called a lawyer, not just any lawyer. Someone who specialized in elder law, someone who understood exactly how situations like this unfold, how pressure is applied, how decisions are manipulated, and more importantly, how to stop it before it goes too far. I explained everything. The sudden return, the brochures, the power of attorney, the appraisal, all of it. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then she said, "You need to act carefully but quickly." That was all I needed to hear. Over the next few days, I started setting things in motion. Quietly, without drawing attention, I requested a full copy of any legal documents my father had signed recently. I scheduled a private consultation for him without Ethan knowing. I began reviewing property ownership records, making sure everything was exactly where it needed to be, because if Ethan thought he could simply step in and take control, then he clearly didn't understand what he was up against. But I didn't confront him, not yet, because I wanted more. I wanted him to reveal everything, and he did. One afternoon, I overheard him on the phone. He was outside near the driveway, speaking in a low voice, but not low enough. "Yeah, it's a good property," he said. "Lake access, fully renovated, perfect condition." I stopped walking, my entire body went still. "I just need to get the authority sorted," he continued. "After that, it's straightforward." Authority, that word confirmed everything. This was never about safety. This was about ownership, about selling, about turning my father's home into profit. I stepped back quietly, making sure he didn't see me, and for the first time since he returned, I felt something very clear, not anger, not sadness, control, because now I didn't just suspect his intentions. I had heard them, and that changed everything. That night, I didn't say anything. I sat at the dinner table like always, listened like always, watched like always, but inside I was already planning the next move, because now it was no longer about stopping him. It was about exposing him, and there's a difference. Stopping someone protects you. Exposing someone destroys their position completely. The following morning, I handed my father a folder. Inside it were documents, clear explanations, and a simple breakdown of what power of attorney actually meant, what rights it gave, what risks it carried, and most importantly, what it could allow someone to do if misused. He read it slowly, carefully. When he finished, he looked at me differently, not confused, not uncertain, clear. "I didn't understand," he said quietly. "I know," I replied, and in that moment something shifted. He wasn't under Ethan's influence anymore, not completely, but enough, and that was all I needed. Because now the next step wasn't just mine, it was ours. Ethan thought he was close to winning. He thought the house was within reach. He thought control was just a signature away, but what he didn't realize was this: the game had already changed, and he was no longer the one in control, I was. The moment I showed my father the documents, something changed in the house that could not be seen but could definitely be felt, like the air itself had become heavier, slower, and more aware of what was happening beneath the surface of our family. He didn't speak much after reading everything. He just sat there holding the papers, as if for the first time he was seeing the situation from a place where emotions were not involved, only facts. And that silence told me more than any words ever could. For years, my father had trusted people easily, especially his own children, because he believed that family didn't need protection from itself, but life had never been kind to that belief. And now it was starting to crack under pressure. Ethan noticed the shift almost immediately. He was always observant like that, always watching for reactions, always measuring how close he was to influence, and that evening at dinner, I could see him trying to understand why the dynamic in the room felt different, even though no one had openly challenged him yet. But I stayed calm. That was the key. People like Ethan don't react to confrontation right away. They react to resistance they can't immediately explain, and I had just given him that. Over the next few days, I continued acting normal, almost too normal, like nothing had changed, like I had accepted his version of reality, but behind that calm surface, every action I took was deliberate, structured, and moving toward a very specific outcome. I met the lawyer again. This time, I brought copies of everything Ethan had done, every document he had introduced, every conversation I had recorded, every subtle attempt to shift authority away from my father and into his control. And as she reviewed everything, her expression slowly shifted from professional interest to concern. "This is more than just family disagreement," she said carefully. "This is a pattern of financial and emotional manipulation." Hearing it spoken out loud made it real in a different way. Not emotional, legal, structured, recognizable, and that meant it could be challenged. We began the process quietly, not aggressively. Carefully, because the goal was not to create chaos. The goal was to build a case that couldn't be ignored. Meanwhile, Ethan started becoming more impatient. I could see it in the way he spoke, the way he walked through the house like he was already trying to imagine it without us in it. The way he started asking my father more direct questions about decisions that weren't his to control. "Have you thought more about assisted living?" he asked one evening, trying to sound casual but failing to hide the urgency underneath. My father didn't answer immediately. He looked at me first. That was new. That single glance told me everything. He wasn't fully under Ethan's influence anymore. He was thinking, and thinking is dangerous for someone trying to manipulate you. "I'm fine here," my father finally said. The room went quiet. Ethan smiled, but it wasn't real, it was forced. "Of course you are," he replied, but his tone had changed. It was tighter now. Controlled, because something was slipping, and he could feel it. The next day, I noticed him on the phone again, standing near the window, speaking lower than before, but not careful enough. "I need this resolved quickly," he said, "before she interferes further." She, that was me. I stopped walking for a second, listening from a distance, not interrupting, not reacting, just collecting. Because now I knew something important. He wasn't just trying to influence my father, he was preparing for me, and that meant I had officially become a threat in his plan. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at my desk, reviewing everything we had gathered so far, organizing it into timelines, connections, inconsistencies, and intentions, because once patterns become visible on paper, they become undeniable in court. By morning, the lawyer called again. "We're ready to move to the next step," she said. I understood exactly what that meant. Formal notification, legal challenge, documentation submission, the point where private manipulation becomes public record. But before we acted, I wanted one more thing. Proof that Ethan would not stop on his own, and I didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, a second appraiser showed up. Different company, different paperwork. Same intention. I walked outside before he could enter the house. "This property is not for sale," I said firmly. He looked confused. "I was instructed." "You were instructed incorrectly," I interrupted, and just like the first one, he left. But this time, I didn't go back inside right away. I stayed outside for a moment, looking at the lake, letting everything settle into place. Situation was no longer unclear. It was defined. Ethan wasn't guessing anymore, he was acting, which meant the next move wouldn't be subtle, it would be direct, and I was ready for it. That evening, I placed the legal documents on the table before dinner. Ethan looked at them immediately. "What is this?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. I watched him carefully. Then I said, "It's clarity." He picked them up slowly. Read the first page, then the second, and I saw it. The moment his confidence shifted, not disappeared, shifted. Because now he understood something very important. This was no longer just family conflict. This was documented resistance. "I think you're making this more complicated than it needs to be," he said finally. I leaned back slightly. "No," I replied calmly. "You did that when you tried to take something that doesn't belong to you." For the first time since he returned, he didn't have an immediate response. And in that silence, I knew we were close. Not to resolution, but to confrontation. And this time, I wasn't reacting anymore, I was prepared. The tension in the house didn't explode all at once. It didn't come with shouting or dramatic confrontation. Instead, it built slowly, like pressure rising under glass, until even silence started to feel dangerous. Ethan had always believed he was in control of the situation, that everything he was doing was just a matter of time and paperwork. But now, for the first time, I could see something unfamiliar in him, uncertainty. It showed in the way he read the documents again and again, as if the words might change if he looked long enough. It showed in the way he avoided direct eye contact with my father, because deep down, he knew the influence he had carefully built was starting to weaken. And I didn't rush it, because revenge is never about speed, it's about timing. The lawyer finalized everything quietly. Every document, every recorded conversation, every appraiser visit, every attempt to establish control over the property. It was all organized into a clear legal case that could no longer be dismissed as family misunderstanding. This wasn't emotion anymore. It was evidence. The next morning, Ethan walked into the house holding a folder of his own. He placed it on the table like it was a final move in a game he thought he was still winning. "I've already spoken to someone," he said confidently. "If we agree to sell now, everything stays simple." There it was again, sell, control disguised as concern. My father looked at him, then at me, but this time his silence wasn't confusion, it was awareness. Slowly, he pushed the folder back toward Ethan. "I'm not selling this house," he said firmly. The room changed instantly. Ethan blinked like he hadn't expected that answer, like reality had refused to follow his plan. "You don't understand what you're refusing," he said, his voice tightening. "This place is expensive to maintain, it's not practical, it's my home," my father interrupted. And for the first time, Ethan had nothing to say. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, final, the kind of silence that marks the moment when control officially slips from one person to another. That afternoon, the lawyer arrived. Not alone. With documentation, formal notices, and everything required to legally challenge unauthorized financial influence over an elder's property and decisions. Ethan's face changed the moment he saw it. "This is ridiculous," he said immediately. "She's exaggerating everything." But no one responded emotionally, because emotions were no longer relevant. The lawyer placed the documents on the table calmly. "These are records of unauthorized appraisal attempts, repeated external influence regarding property value, and documented pressure placed on a protected homeowner," she said. Each word landed like weight, structured, official, undeniable. Ethan looked at me then, for the first time not with confidence but with realization. Because he finally understood something he had refused to accept since the beginning. I hadn't been reacting to him, I had been building against him. "I was trying to help him," he said, but even he didn't sound sure anymore. My father stood up slowly, and that simple movement shifted everything again. "I don't need to be moved," he said quietly. "I don't need to be sold. And I don't need to be controlled." Then he looked at Ethan. "But I do need honesty." And that was the moment everything ended, not loudly, not violently, just clearly. Ethan tried to speak again, but there was nothing left to argue against. No confusion left to manipulate. No uncertainty left to exploit. Only truth, and truth, once fully exposed, leaves no space for control. He left the house that evening. No final speech, no dramatic exit, just silence. Days passed, then weeks. The house returned to what it was always meant to be: peaceful, stable, safe. My father walked to the lake again one morning, slowly but independently, stopping at the edge of the water like he used to, watching the reflection of the sky move gently across the surface. And I stood behind him, not as someone protecting a fragile life, but as someone who had protected his right to live it on his own terms. Because in the end, that was never just about a house. It was about dignity, and no one was going to take that away again. If you watched this story till the end, thank you for being here. If you believe in justice, respect, and standing up for what is right, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Justice Serve Tales for more emotional revenge and justice stories like this. And tell me in the comments, backhand index pointing right, what would you have done in Megan's place? See you in the next story.